Compensation for winning teams. I just didn't initially make this a handout, and then I got my amazing admin team, Terry, because she has an adaptable mindset. Anybody remember that from yesterday? That was the first one in our mindset, adaptable, right? Terry's adaptable, so she was able to put this together. So in your package, when you find it, there is a handout for this, because this has historically not been done all that terribly well in the healthcare service fields in my observation. So pull that together, and you can rate yourself again on this, or just write down action steps for growth if this is something that you need help with. One of my mentors, John DeMartini, says the two things that most humans are the most messed up about is sexuality and money. And in my 58 years on the planet, I have found that to be. So we're going to go through what our perceptions is of some ways to ensure that you create a compensation model for a winning team. All right, the first thing, transparency. Transparency, full transparency of all revenue and the cost breeds trust and commitment and psychic ownership. People work with you, not for you. People work with you, not for you. People work with you, not for you. Let me say it again. Geez, people work with you, not for you. I can tell you this from years of experience, you guys, the amount of trust that is bred when you share with them, because most team members have never run a business before. That's why they're not entrepreneurs. They have no idea what it costs to run a business. And when you share with them the cost to run a business, it absolutely, for most people, in my experience, when I enroll clients in getting transparency of the books, it blows them out of their mind. They had no idea it costs that much. And a really A-grade team player will go, how can I help you cut the costs? I can tell you this also from being a team lead now for 30 plus years, particularly in the healthcare fields, you guys, they know anyways. They're at the front desk. They're watching the money come and go, and they could know probably within $100 what the revenue is in the office. So when you actually just open the books and share it with them, the amount of trust and psychic ownership they take in the business just skyrockets. So I'm a huge fan in fully revealing books. Again, but the piece they don't always get is the cost to run the business. And I can tell you this too. I've had team members tell me this to my face. They want you to do well. They expect you to do well. They expect you to be making good money. If they wanted to make the same kind of money you're making, they would probably go to school and earn their degree and become you. That's not their role. That's not their seat in the bus. They don't necessarily want to do that. If they do, then encourage them to go. Bring somebody else on. But I can tell you, when you get this level of transparency and psychic ownership, it's a game changer. The other thing you want to do when you're recruiting is you want to do compensation based upon market value comparables, right? It's based on market research, and again, not just for your industry, but for other comparable roles in other industries. Because if you're going to get an A+ team member, there's lots of other places that they could work, right? There's lots of other companies they could work for, and not just in the healthcare industry, in other places. I remember bringing on an office manager years ago, and when we got to the outcomes assessment, we could talk about the compensation model and the bonus model and all that stuff. Literally, she goes, you know, Tom, I've got an offer from Bell Canada to go in and be their team lead there for a group of 28, whatever they were. And I'm like, I get it, Lise, you're high end, right? So of course you've got lots of options. So you don't just want to do comparables based upon just your particular industry. You want to do it upon other industries. And again, if you're in healthcare, you're in chiropractic, I mean, look at dental, look at optometry, because you want to make sure that your team is some of the best paid people in your area. Number 3, base. And again, rate yourself, you guys, from 1 to 10 on some of the stuff, or just write action steps that you could take. Like maybe the first action step is open the books, right? Just open the books, share that. The freedom, the mental freedom that comes when you make your privates public is almost like indescribable. So that might be an action step. Doing market value comparables might be an action step. You decide. Base. Many bosses default to an hourly pay scale, and I contend that that's okay to start with, but moving to salary or productivity-based model increases efficiency and effectiveness. Think about the psychology of where hourly wages came from, you guys. My history on this goes back to the English sweatshops is one of the places that was first founded, where they had no value. They would get them in there working in these sweatshops, 12 and 14 hours a day, and they'd pay them like, a pence or something, right? Like a penny for a day. You think about the psychology of hourly. What you're doing is you're paying somebody for their time, not for what they do. So they could sit on their butts and not do anything, and by statute, you still have to pay them. The psychology of hourly is the slower and worse I am at this, the more money I make. Why would you want that psychology on your team long term? Now, in the early stages of a new relationship and where it's more of a dictatorial leadership style where they need lots of support and you're really, that's in our culture today, in my opinion, sadly, it's a default mechanism. So it's okay in the early stages of a relationship. I'm not poo-pooing it completely, but once somebody has earned the right, moving them to a salary or a productivity-based model just increases the effectiveness. So let me give you, a raw example for our admin staff, Terry, right? Terry was on average, we were set up a contract that she was working like 8 to 12 hours a week, and it ranged. And so relative to cash flow, that varied a little bit month to month for Full Circle relative to how many hours that she worked. And she could work more hours, but it was just kind of a range that we had. After she'd been with us for a year, I said, Terry, you know what? I 100% trust you. I 100% want you to just get the work done. Your outcomes assessments are clear. You've been evaluated 4 times. You know it. I know it. You're on board. You're part of the family. What if we just switch you to a salary? Where I don't care if it takes you 3 hours a week to get the job done, because the outcomes you're creating are worth like $1,000 a week to me, right? So we just moved her to a salary situation. We didn't track her hours anymore. I didn't care how many hours she did. What I cared about is the outcomes, because I knew those outcomes would move the needle. And there's some weeks where I don't know how many hours she worked. It might have been light. Some weeks she worked more. Again, didn't matter to me. What I cared about was the outcomes. I cared about the productivity. I cared about her knowing her seat on the bus and moving the needle for us. Because now what happens is, in the psychology of this is, I used to have to work, 10 hours a week to get to make my $1,000 a month, right? Now I can work 8 hours and still make my $1,000. I'm going to look for ways to be even better at what I do, more effective, more creative, more collaborative in what I do. That's the kind of mindset I want in my team, right? It's a complete mindset shift, you guys, to get away from thinking about hourly compensation all the time. Number 4, productivity-based bonuses. These are ideally based on things that they directly influence. You never, ever base bonuses on age. It creates expectation and entitlement. I hear this all the time. Well, my team member's been with me for another year, so I guess they get another $1 an hour. That's absolute insanity. It's not based upon outcomes. It's not based upon productivity. It's based upon aging. So what? So now they turn 42, so you give them another $1. You have 43, another $1, 44, another. Where's it end? What do they start making $90 an hour because they're old and gray? No. It's about a mission. It's about fulfillment of a purpose. It's about fulfillment about their outcomes, their seat on the bus, and doing it really well. So when you create productivity models, now it's a way for them to go above and beyond the call of duty and to actually get bonused for that. I had a team member when I was in hands-on practice years ago. Her name was Brenda Green. Brenda was not the warmest, fuzziest human I ever worked with, but you want to talk about efficient. She came to me, thankfully, and early in my career, she had been a professional assistant in Toronto for 18 years. Her husband got transferred to MTO up in our area, and she went canvassing for jobs. I saw her resume, and she didn't even hardly get to the end of the drive, and I'm like, excuse me, could we talk? When Brenda was there, we created some productivity bonuses, and I asked her to help me figure out what they could be. Here was the ones we come up with, because she could directly influence these things. Every day that we had no missed appointments, she would get a $10 bonus. This is back like in the early 90s. $10 meant more than it does today. And she helped me decide what the bonus level should be, right? So every day that we had no missed appointments, she got a $10 bonus that day, right? Any day where we had no switched appointments, like no people called in and moved their appointments, she got another $10. We called that a perfect day. The best we ever had, you guys, and I was seeing about 100, 125 people a day on the shifts in those days. The best we ever had, you guys, 9 perfect days in a row. 9 in a row. No missed appointments, no moved appointments, no canceled appointments. 9 days in a row. The pride that she felt wearing that badge of honor was incredible. I couldn't have paid her the $180 fast enough for having those kind of days, right? The error in judgment I see a lot of team leads make is they create bonuses that the people don't have direct influence or can't influence. That's an error in judgment, in my opinion. It's got to be something that they can directly influence. And sometimes you got to be creative. So ask them to help you come up with a productivity-based bonus. I'm also a big fan of a team-based bonus, right? Where everybody helps support and collaborate on the tough jobs. So in our company, we have a growth in production year over year. shared by the whole team. Everybody gets a chunk. If they're just a part-timer, they get a 0.5. If they're a regular team member, like our coaching team, for example, they get like a full share. And I get a full share. We all share this equally. Let's just say that, we did 500,000 in revenue, and the next year we do 600,000. That's 100,000 growth. So they would either get 10% of the growth in profit, because they can't completely control all the expenses. I'm the CFO, so I still control that. So they can influence but not control it. Or they get 7.5% of growth in revenue. Okay? So if you take, 100,000 bucks, you're looking at it from a revenue standpoint, there'd be $7,500 that would be available in the pool that would be distributed equally amongst the team end of the year. It's kind of nice, you guys, to get a $700,000, $800,000, $1,500 bonus at the end of the year. I'm happy to share growth with my team. Happy to share it. But what I like about these productivity models is there's no growth to share. There's no expectation that there's going to be a Christmas bonus, right? And because I have open books at any time, any member of my team can know exactly where we stand financially. It's like there's no surprises. And they want to move the needle to help fulfill our mission, because when we fulfill our mission and help you fulfill your missions, then we know there's productivity, we know there's revenue, and I'm happy to share that. And I would encourage you to as well. Last one, longevity bonus. My mentor, Rick Sapio, helped me with this one. 2% of salary kept in escrow and paid out at the end of 10 years if they stay. That's an if, okay? The upgrade is to pay out as a values-based experience or thing. I can tell you that it takes something like a 2% of now they leave after 8 or 9 years, they don't get this. It's clearly written in their contract of employment, okay? That this is a long-term play, right? I can tell you this, years ago, when I started consulting 25 years ago, I did some math on the cost to a chiropractic office of transitioning a front desk person in terms of chaos, confusion, recalls, new patient missings, lack of flow and momentum in the marketing side, all of that stuff. I figured minimally it cost 10 grand to the company to replace the front desk staff. Today, I would bet that's closer to 15 or 20 grand. So if you're compensating your team well and they're out at their bowling league with other admin level players, and they're bragging about how well they're looked after, about how well they're supported, how well they're challenged in their pay schedule, they ain't going anywhere. I can tell you, if you're choosing to be stingy with your comp models and you're transitioning team members all the time, you are pissing money out the window faster than you can imagine. So having a longer term thing, and if you make it values based, I'll tell you a story that Rick told me. There's one of his people that he worked with had a team member that every time he called, when he got talking to, her name was Janet, Janet would tell him about that she's only 3 years away from her, her 10-year bonus, her escrow bonus. And that's where Rick learned it from this business guy. And she said, yeah, and the boss is going to send me and my hubby on a 5-star cruise. I've never been on a cruise in my life. We're going to go to the Greek islands. I mean, she just talked this up every time. So Rick worked with this guy long enough that the 10-year anniversary came up, and he actually had the date in his calendar as a reminder. And it was a few weeks or even months before this was supposed to happen. So Rick calls the office. He gets talking to Janet, and he goes, hey, Janet, 10-year anniversary coming up. And she goes, oh, my God, Rick, I'm so excited. And you know what my boss did? He upgraded it to 6-star. And she starts laying the thing out about the islands they're going to see and what they're going to do. She was so stoked, she literally started to cry on the telephone conversation. That's a committed team member, you guys. That's a committed team member. The 10 grand or whatever the dollar value was, I don't even know exactly what the dollar value was. That 10 grand was worth 100 times that in the extra productivity, focus, commitment that team member was providing for that office. I absolutely guarantee you. All right, if you scored yourself from 1 to 10 on these, which is an option, add it up. If not, I want you to write a action step behind any one of these that you haven't had an opportunity to do yet, so that we can help you, move the ball down